This is Super SaaS Bros with Cory and Jayde. Let's jump in. Hey everyone, welcome to Super SaaS Bros. What's up, Jayde?
What's up, dude? How are you?
I'm good. You're back.
I know. Back in the land of the cold. I swear, I just coming from Florida, where the temperature is like 25 degrees Celsius right now, which is so crazy to think that that's their January and February. But then, back home in BC, where now it's like a snowstorm and it's just like -10. Ain't no fun, but I'm good. I missed home, so.
Yeah, after being gone for that long, I would miss home too, even if home was cold. So
Yeah, exactly.
nice, man.
How was your week?
Dude, I had a great week. Week was busy, filled with lots of fun calls and stuff. But more importantly, there was like some crazy news last week that kind of broke the tech world, and everyone's talking about it. So I figured we may as well talk about it too. But DeepSeek came out of nowhere and decided to just like shock the world with their open source, cheap, but a really effective model. It's crazy. Have you looked into it?
Oh yeah, for sure. I
Dude.
played with it. I think it's really interesting to see how, you have all these wrappers around like an OpenAI model or like a Gemini model. And then you have something like this new open source model coming out from China, and you see how it almost snowballs in the US market in terms of like the effect that it has downstream, right?
Yeah.
Like you see Nvidia stock drop by like almost 20%. And you have guys like Elon Musk and Sam Altman just like throwing money at the CEO of Nvidia, Jensen, or whatever his name is. I can't remember his name. But just like throwing literally billions and billions of dollars, because Nvidia can charge what the fuck they want on these chips. And then these guys are just like, we need your chips to do all these processing power. And then you have something like DeepSeek come out and they're like, okay, it cost us $6 million to build. It's just as efficient and it rivals your latest LLM.
And they're running it on like a few like Apple M2 Ultras.
Yeah.
It's
bananas.
wild.
Yeah, it's bananas. So to me, it's like, okay, so it begs the question of when you start to tightly couple your SaaS product or your new AI tool or whatever it is on these models, how hard is it for you to kind of spin it out and bring in something like a DeepSeek, right? Because at that point, you could be saving your business, your company a lot of money.
It's true. Because how much less was it? I forget if it's like, is it 15 or 20% less like costly than like OpenAI? Like if they compared the R1 model to OpenAI, like I think it was around that, like 15-20% cheaper in terms of like processing power.
I don't know the exact numbers, but it's definitely a lot cheaper. It's open source. So yeah, I think it's super interesting. And it's just like, I hope a lot of people are coming into this and, having some sort of learning lesson on how important it is to, when you're starting to build software, make sure it's flexible, right? Because you're going down one path and you go so far down and you start to tightly couple yourself around one thing. And then something like this comes out, it could save you guys thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. That does essentially the exact same thing, if not better. So yeah, I think that's like pretty cool. I think DeepSeek just kind of took the world by storm. I think it's affected the US markets, Canadian markets all around the world actually. So yeah. I think it's super cool to kind of see that and how easy it was to just disrupt the AI market in such a quick time.
Like if you want to call it an AI bubble, we don't know how many layers this bubble is, but it like popped the first layer of it. And the crazy thing too is like this was a side project for a hedge fund. It wasn't even like their main thing. Like they were like a social driven hedge fund, but like it was a side project for them to deliver something they were trying to do. And they did it on like less than $10 million, or it was $6 million that they spent to actually like create it or something like that or run it. And it's wild. But you're even talking about like the prices of like chips and Nvidia. I was looking up like Microsoft, Google, I'm trying to think who else was up there, but each of them, dude bought like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of the H100 chips. Like so many. Like they put so much into the infrastructure.
Yeah.
And even like the whole Stargate thing, like they're $500 billion into Stargate, like into AI and AI infrastructure. It's like, well, do we need to throw that much money at it? You know?
Yeah. I think in the grand scheme of things, it's like maybe just because of the innovation it can create for decades. But I agree. It's just it's super curious to see how something like this can just kind of come into the market and just disrupt everything.
So wild, man. And this like combines some of my two favorite worlds too, because like I love the stock market. I love watching like how it gets influenced by things like this and how sensitive things are in the market. Like this, something like DeepSeek that caused Nvidia to drop 20%. It caused like Microsoft to drop by like double digits as well too, and other various tech stocks out there. It just shows that like a lot of the value out in the market is just investor sentiment, right? We value things however we want to perceive it, and there are things that are influencing it like this that will, they'll automatically like sell off a bunch of their stock, but then you watch over the next little bit, it's going to climb right back up, back to the previous levels. But this is a way for them to like scoop up some value at the bottom and then let it build back up.
Yeah,
crazy, man. But I haven't played in DeepSeek yet. But you said you have.
Yeah, well, I mean, even like Perplexity right now, you can kind of modify it to use DeepSeek. I think even maybe by default right now it's using DeepSeek. It's reasoning model. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Like comparative to like
I think it's cool.
Cloud or Gemini.
You're able to kind of follow its train of thought. So
giving
it a prompt, you'll see how it's reasoning, and yeah, I think it's very good. I think the quality is very good. So
cool. For like projects that we've worked on and stuff that you've built, like how do you now think about those products and potentially using like a DeepSeek's model?
Yeah, I think it's very situational. I think reasoning models are great at like code, math, science, things like that, where it really needs to kind of take its time to think. I think things that are just like generating content, probably not as much, but I would say for some of the projects that we're doing that, is just content generation light, like not too heavy, I would say it's not very necessary. But as we continue to build and grow, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of use cases where, especially in the finance world, especially in the like the hedge fund world, I think it's the forecasting world, this is where it's really going to come in handy.
The forecasting world will be interesting too, because I came from nearly probably 10 years of, better or worse, called a forecaster in corporate retail. And it is such a manual process. And if you do have technology that does it, you end up having so many factors that you want to include into a forecast. And it's never accurate. Right. It really never is. Like, I don't think the 10 years I spent in corporate, I don't know if I ever had like an accurate more than an 80% accurate forecast.
So So now with something like this out, how do you think this changes the game, if at all?
Well, I mean, I'm hoping it actually can deliver more accurate forecasts. Like, I don't know if it can or not, because like I said, I have used a lot of different technologies that have been like mostly custom built for the companies that I've worked for. So they're like all clunky and not great, but I'm just really interested to see like how many factors this can take into consideration to build out a forecast. So I'll give a great example in the retail world, because everyone is a consumer and we all understand like the ebbs and flows of the retail world. So throughout the year, there's buying seasons, right? So obviously the biggest ones, you have like Black Friday, the holidays. You might even consider like Easter or back to school, some of these like really big moments of retail. Now, those moments we can forecast very well because we know when people are going to the stores. We know when people are shopping online, and it's very much easier. But for every other time in between, it is so hard to forecast what's going to happen. And because I can start listing off different factors. Like this, is there the same number of people shopping online and in store at that week of the year, or that day of the year, or that hour of the year from last year? Is there, are you selling at the same price? Do you have the same promotions? Do you have like all these things, which we try to take all these into consideration, but we end up having so many factors that we don't have all the data to support it. And so what I'm curious to see now is if these models can help support all of these factors. Like you might have like 200, 300 factors that you want to consider in a forecast. Now, instead of like getting like just people to try to like do it, now you can actually have like just like a model do it for you, right? So I'm hoping it could be easier, because I just think about the times, man, I was building a forecast and I always thought of like, there's got to be a faster way to do this. Like it is, I'm telling you, it's manual. Like I would literally guess what the next month like forecast would be. And it's always usually based on like, oh, how did we do last year and how are we doing recently? And like, seasons. So I think it can create it'll create some complexity in a forecast, but I'm hopefully that it can create some accuracy that hasn't been seen yet.
Yeah, I think it's like critical thinking too, right? Like how much better can it evaluate its new set of projections based on previous data, but more so the way it's able to critically analyze the data coming in and build those projections. How can it do that better than a human? And if so, why? Like what is that delta there in terms of reasoning, right? And it's probably just information. Like it probably just knows more just because of its capacity.
Yeah. So, and I would love to see, so when you want to forecast something that hasn't occurred yet and has never occurred before, that's where I'm curious to see if it can do it. Because a lot of times you needed to build some assumptions, and usually you're the one giving it. But I would actually love it to be the one that actually creates the assumptions and then puts it into a forecast itself. Because that's always usually the flow process, is that like you build the assumptions as a person, you give the assumptions and the data to the model, and the model will build something out, and then you get the output. You either like it or you don't, and you ask it to adjust it, and you move forward with whatever that is. Right. I would love it to do the assumption part, the data, the output, all the way through, and just see. I would love to just see like how accurate that is.
Yeah, I think right off the bat, it's definitely do a better job, only because it understands the closeness between two pieces of data. And what I mean by that is, and all the tech nerds would kind of understand this a little more, but vectorizing data, and you're able to see how close the two vectors are together. You're able to see how similar they are together, right? As humans, sometimes it's not as easy for us. Sometimes it's really easy, right? Like if we're trying to find images of a dog, and we see all these images, we're able to pick and choose which ones are dogs. But it gets a lot more complex than that with data that might not exist, but might be related to what we're trying to predict. Kind of like to your point on how am I able to create predictions in a world where, for instance, retail shopping, I'm a brand new shop and I have no data from last year. How do I predict this Christmas season? But if I'm a retail store that is very similar to a Home Depot or a Lowe's or whatever, and I have their data, and then I also have like where I am and my demographic and X, Y, and Z, things that we might not even think of as humans, but it already understands, and it has those like vectors of data on how closely related they are together. It'll definitely do a better job than us. So yeah, it's gonna be pretty cool. I'm very excited for the finance world, for sure.
Oh man, that it'll be, and also just human bias too.
Totally.
You oh my gosh, you couldn't believe how many
wishful thinking,
or just like when you start talking about the corporate world and like what they want, like financially, certain like senior leaders or something want like a certain target to hit, and that will influence like the forecast itself. So whether or not a forecast feels right, you're gonna put it in just because you're trying to hit a number that someone else wants. So I love that. Like potentially you can take out like the human bias of it all, especially when you get down to like even very specific portfolios. So whatever, if you're in like a hedge fund and you're trading like a certain commodity or something like that, you know, you're taught to not be emotional about your trades, but sometimes you are, or maybe sometimes you know someone in the industry and you have some level of bias to it, which will influence how you move forward with it. So I love how this can kind of like maybe put a layer between you and your decisions.
It's objective.
And that's what I like.
Everything is just like objective. This is the truth.
Yeah.
There's no human bias. There's no emotions behind it. This is just what it is. This is my best prediction. Yeah, and I think that's, I mean, I think we're a few years out from it, but when you start to think about the job market and how does that impact, you know, people in these jobs and these forecasters, and this can be thought of in kind of any vertical, right? That has to do with forecasting or content generation or anything that can really be taken over by AI. And I was having this conversation with a buddy of mine the other day, and I'm sure we've all kind of had these conversations on like, shit, like I'm next, like AI is going to take over my job. I'm not going to have a job. Where am I going to be in 5 years, 10 years? And some people think it's like, it's the brick and mortar stuff, right? That are going to go first, the hands-on stuff. And I almost feel like that's the last to go. I think it's like myself that's probably first to go, right? Software engineers, you know, publishers, content generators, anybody that's kind of like newspaper writers, authors, researchers. Yeah, a lot of these guys might not be in trouble yet, but there's definitely going to be a world where either they're going to have to embrace, because they're not going to have another choice, they're going to have to embrace AI being part of their workflow to help accelerate their work, or they will be replaced. And then it's like the plumbers and the electricians and the trades, like these guys I think are like last to go, right? Because you can't really do that right now. And I think they're gonna really be able to use AI to help accelerate. An example could be if I'm a mechanic and I have no idea what's going on with a car, but for whatever reason I can take a video of it of under the hood or a picture, and it can just tell me, yo dude, like it's missing the X, Y, and Z, or this is what's wrong with it, and it can just see that because you couldn't see it or whatever. Yeah, these guys are going to be able to have AI help them in their everyday workflow to make their lives a lot easier, make these a lot more efficient, and hopefully a lot cheaper on the consumer too.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think it was actually funny enough, it was a Nvidia like presentation that showed like the timeline of AI, I guess. That's the way to describe it. Like, you know, it was, you know, we're a generative AI and then AI agents. And the last one was like physical AI, which is basically what you're saying. It's like those people are going to be lost to go because we'll call it like basically building a robot to replace like a laborious job is actually harder than everything before it. You know, it's also more capital intensive, like all this sort of stuff, right? So all the like hands-on jobs, I agree. They're going to be the last ones to, if they go. Yeah. But everything before, I think was it just Meta also that announced that like they're going to hire like 40% less developers or something like that? Or was it a different company? I just heard it this morning, but it's escaping me. But a big company, I think under Fang, just like said that as well too. They just don't need it, like truthfully, right? They just don't need that many developers anymore, because all the developers, like even said it before, like with the tools available to you, you're like the power of 10 developers, right? So I think we're going to see a lot more of that, and I don't think this, like, you know, software developers are going to be completely gone, but what I think there's going to be less of them out there moving forward, less jobs available.
Yeah, and then it starts to beg the question of, so like, what's next for humans, right?
Yep.
And I dove like really deep into this the other day because I'm like, if you start to think of like the monetary system and however that was created to basically like prevent chaos in the world, right? Like we live in a world where we're rewarded for our skills and our labor, essentially, right? And essentially, the better your skills, and the smarter you work, the harder you work, will probably be rewarded a lot more than someone else, right?
Yep.
And if all of that is taken away, then how do you start to become rewarded in a monetary way? Is it just like a global income, some sort of communist type of outlook on society? Or is there like a new kind of revolution where humans are, I don't know, now their worth is now governed by something else, you know?
Interesting. Why do you think it would ever get to that point though?
Why?
Yeah, like what made you go down that path of like this? It could potentially like go to something like that.
So okay, so either one of two things is, so imagine a world where all jobs,
yeah,
are taken over by AI.
Okay.
All jobs, right? So
Yep.
now I wake up in the morning, what do I do? Right? And how do I get paid? Right? And then so one way is we have this like global income where basically we all take the same pay, because there is nothing that differentiates me from you, because even though I can do X but you can do Y, it doesn't even matter. It's redundant, right? It's like the Star Trek world essentially, right?
Yeah.
Right? So like everything is taken care of. So we don't have to worry about farming, we don't have to worry about innovation, none of that, because it's all taken care of for us.
Yeah.
So then what's next, right? How do we get paid? How do we get compensated? How do we like live? And it's like, okay, so global income, right? So we each kind of whatever. But then it's like currency at that point is now capped, which nobody likes, right? So which is going to cause chaos, right?
Yeah.
So then you start to think, okay, so that's probably a chaotic option, right? Because I don't think anybody was going to want that. So then the next thing is there is another system that is created that basically governs wealth. And if you think back to like, you know, the early days where it was just like strength and it was just like power and it was just like kingdoms and like armies and things like that, it wasn't really about innovation or farming or anything like that. It was really about like power, right?
Right.
And that's how wealth was basically created. And now we come into a place where it's like, okay, it's a lot different now, kinda, but in like the 21st century type of way. So now what's next, right? How do we build a monetary system, a rewarding system for humans to live?
That's so interesting. Yeah, I feel like my mind immediately went to like, how do you reward someone? Well, it's like, well, maybe it's around social purpose at that point. Because I imagine like even if every job is like, you know, covered by AI, we don't need to innovate anymore. We don't need to work anymore.
Yeah.
But there's still going to be people that are homeless, right? I think, right? I mean, unless we're just building homes for free because we don't need the money,
why
right?
would they, but even why would they be? Right? Like if
I don't know.
Yeah. No, seriously, yeah. Why would they be? Because at that point, you know, the dude that lives in $100 million mansion on a private island is now just as rich as the homeless man, because there's nothing there that separates the two that they contribute to society.
I feel like it'd be so chaotic. I feel like people would actually try to like now, because when you talk about that, the time back then with like kingdoms and armies and stuff like that, people just wanting power and more like land.
Yeah.
I think people would just want that. They're like, well, if I can't have money, I may as well just have like more land and just try to own stuff.
The desire to just have more.
Desire to have more.
But of what? Of land? Yeah. Then
I think that's what I would do.
land.
Either that, dude, or I would start thinking about like, hey, well, this planet is, you know, tapped out. Let's go outwards. Maybe that's how you get everyone to start thinking about like outwards. So maybe innovation actually would never die, because people are going to start innovating about like, well, how do we've done enough to this planet. We've made this planet automated essentially, right? So how do we do this somewhere else now? How do we leave? How do we like expand? So actually, it might be the most innovative thing that ever happened to mankind.
Yeah.
I would start thinking about how to go.
Oh, seriously? Yeah. I think that's now the next thing is like discovery, right?
Discovery,
Like
yeah.
what else is there, right? You completely innovated the planet. You don't need to do anything. You basically can have everything you want because we live in this gluttonous world of like you can have whatever you want now. And then it's like, okay, so what next? And either one of two things is gonna be true. Either AI can now outperform the critical thinking based on its previous data than humans can. So it itself will do the discovery and human beings just can't compare. Or somehow we can compete with that and be able to figure out how to, I don't know, teleport, you know, like something crazy, some sort of science fiction type of thing that AI is just like, that is impossible because I was trained that teleportation is like impossible. Right. So I'm not even going to go down that road.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
super cool.
So I don't think innovation would ever die. I think we would just use our tools to try to innovate even crazier shit. But I think discovery would be the biggest one.
Discovery. 100%
You know what I want
works.
though? Someone to build some sort of crazy AI like machine to just go to the bottom of the ocean and just search everything under there.
Totally.
That would be great because we
100%.
don't know what's under there, and it is such an unexplored area of Earth.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
Yeah. What do you think? This is like completely like going on a tangent, but this is probably a very stupid question, but let me know what your thoughts are on this. Okay, so if you think of the Earth as a globe, right?
It's not
Gravity,
flat. I'm kidding.
or flat, sure. But well, let's agree with. Let's just for the sake of the conversation say it's a globe.
Yeah.
Okay. You have gravity, right? That kind of comes in everywhere along the globe, right? It's a force that kind of comes inward, right?
Yep.
Kind of, but not really. So let's just say that. So now, if you go to the very like the center of the Earth, right?
Yes.
Or let's say, so you go to the center of the Earth. Okay. You have all this force that's like hitting each other at the center, right? What happens when you're at the center? Are you just floating? Because you have all this force hitting you in all the opposite directions. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's kind of like, now we could be totally off base on how we're talking here. So if someone's listening and they're like, dude, you guys are so wrong.
I know.
Just let us know. It's fine.
Still
To me, I immediately
thinks the same.
thought, I honestly just think you would implode from pressure. It's almost like a black hole. Like you would literally just implode. Now, if you had the ability for some reason to withstand that level of pressure, then like theoretically, I don't know why you wouldn't just be like suspended in the middle
Just
there.
be suspended. Right? Yeah.
I guess so. Like that's an interesting one, but otherwise you would just like implode. Like I don't know. We've also never been to the core, so we don't know.
I don't know.
See, as much as I want to go to space, I'm like, there's so much stuff here too that we also don't know. So
I know. I
crazy,
think
man.
another crazy thought I had was instead of trying to like escape Earth to like do like intergalactic travel, but we need Earth to survive. And imagine, so the core of the Earth, I believe, is like heated, right? So imagine we can like leverage that heat, right? If you're anywhere in space, you can somehow heat the Earth from its core because of how gravity kind of comes into it, right? So you don't really need the sun, let's just say.
Okay. I like where you went with that. So you took that out of the equation.
Yeah.
Good.
So let's just say that. So imagine you just put like thrusters on the Earth, and you had a joystick, and you just like moving the Earth. You know what I mean? And then you can just go and travel through space instead of leaving space because, well, we need oxygen to survive. So I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah. Now you're going on a whole road here, though. I'm like, I wonder, our atmospheres, they're the layers to our Earth that allow us to actually live where we are, if those would change because of where you're traveling through in space. You know, like what's the sun and other planets' influence on our atmosphere that allows it to be what it is, right? But that is a really funny thought, though, to put thrusters on the Earth and just someone on a joystick, just like we're just gonna go. It would still take forever.
I know.
But that also would be really funny.
You just need more thrusters. That's it.
Maybe that's what Elon's actually doing.
Yeah.
He's just testing all the stuff, and he's gonna build these massive thrusters in the air.
So I saw this video. Speaking of Elon, and I think it's a pretty old video actually. But you know how he's been able to land rockets properly?
Yes.
Like
So
on
cool.
So cool.
Yeah.
This is like the future of travel, essentially. Where
Okay.
we can go from like LA to New York in like 25 minutes because you go all the way up and you just like do like this like U-shaped thing and then come all
Yeah.
the way down to New York. And we all have like all these little platforms where these rockets land.
Yeah.
As opposed to just traveling through. Yeah.
That would be really, really cool.
Yeah.
That'd be, yeah. I mean, again, this is like just like the first step to them being able. They did it, and that's awesome. I would love to see if they could do it on like a bunch of these like tiny rockets, like that can carry, I don't know, 100 people or something like that.
Yeah.
And also like, it's a lot of firepower.
Yeah.
Like when you see the thing take off and land, I'm like, if you had like a row of those and like all these landing, it would just be fucking smoke everywhere.
Smoke everywhere. Yeah.
So how do you make it so that like you can travel like that and you can have almost like a hub, like an airport, but it's not like just covered in flame and smoke all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it is super cool though, because if I could travel across the country in like half an hour, that would be kind of cool.
Super cool.
The only other time they did something like that was like that really, what's it called? The big black, like jet.
Oh.
No. It's like a jet and it goes like super fast. Oh, I did see it. I forget what it was called, but they traveled like across the US. I want to say definitely under an hour.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's called. Oh, now I'm interested.
Cool.
Yeah, it was the NASA X-43. It traveled almost 12,000 kilometers an hour.
Wow.
It's crazy. Yeah. So,
Crazy
anyways,
stuff.
that'd be really cool. Speaking of planes and travel across the US and stuff like that, is not really that innovative at all, but really cool. There's a new airline called Bark Air.
Bark
And-
Air?
Bark Air, and you can just bring any size dog onto the cabin, and you just
really?
they just hang with you. And it's meant for people who have pets and you want to just travel with them, but you don't have to put them in a crate. You don't have to put them underneath. You don't need to keep them on your lap. They can just like do
Free
the thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've never
And-
heard of this.
Yeah, it's only I think it's in Florida, but they can only travel from Fort Lauderdale to like New York. I think that's the only flight that exists right now. Yeah, but I really want to try it. It's just stupid expensive. But I'm sure Bentley would love it.
There you go.
He would love to travel more. So anyways, if there's a spaceship that could do that, that'd be really cool too.
Even better.
Yeah.
Even better.
I don't know what you'd call it, but
Yeah, I don't know, but I think the world's in for a treat. I think there's just so much going on that it's a very exciting time to be alive.
I think there's just going to be so much innovation that's going to happen over the next 5-10 years. We're going to look back and be like, remember when we used to like fly on a plane? Like how crazy was that? Freaking cavemen. This is how we feel. By God.
dude, I can't wait. I can't wait. Because you think about it like too, when people were like, you're just riding horses, and now they're like, dude, you're flying in planes, you're driving these boxes that have wheels on them. Like,
Yeah.
they're like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And we're gonna look back in like a decade and be like, wow, that was archaic.
Yeah, exactly. There you have it, guys. We're the Super SaaS Bros, and we have taken this podcast to 15, 20, 25 years in the future on where our thoughts are. So hope
You're
you
welcome.
enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you are still here, leave a thumbs up, leave us a rating, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you can find us. And yeah, tune in for the next episode for more SaaS, AI, and tech related stuff. We're here for you.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Super SaaS Bros with Cory and Jayde. We'll see you next time.